Why newsletters are disrespectful.
Well, I would say newsletters are disrespectful because it's full of crap that nobody cares about, or not enough people care about. So, like our accountant would, I asked our accountant, please stop sending newsletters because he sends a newsletter and there's a lot of information in there, and most of it, and sometimes none of it, has anything to do with us or anything that, I think if you're going to send something out to somebody, a newsletter is a bad idea because, again, most things are non-applicable. If especially an accountant, he deals with such a wide variety of business types. If you're going to send me something, pick out the thing in the newsletter, or send the newsletter because maybe it's too hard technically for him to sort the stuff out. But say, hey, none of this applies to you except the thing on page two, right in the middle, the one on whatever the topic is. That I'd appreciate because he just saved me time. There's there's too many time wasters in the world today. People send stuff out, and I'm supposed to read it and understand what. Tell me what I'm supposed to be looking at here. If you're going to send it, be respectful enough of my time because I'm going to do the same for you if I ever send you. But I'm not going to send you one of those. I'm going to send you just a topic. Hey, saw this and thought of you. That would be great if the accountant thought enough of me in the business and the relationship that we have to go, hey, you know what, we're sending out this newsletter, and rather than send you the whole thing and waste your time, I found the here's the piece that directly applies to you. Yeah, I'd go, holy cow, man, thank you. I think it's respectful for, like, even books. I think books are too long. Just give me the 8 pages that make sense. Don't make me read 247 pages. Like there's a book, a real estate book by um, Keller Williams, which one or the other, and it's the one thing. And the one thing, there's 200. I might be off a couple pages, but I think there's 247 pages in the one thing. How really? Just give me the one thing, man, so I can. And it turns out, well, the one thing isn't the one thing. The one thing is, okay, don't. Okay, I didn't need that. So anyway, so I think it's respectful. I think it's most people are behind like 15 books, and everybody's recommending another book, and they're all, and publishers who are having a terrible time these days trying to figure out how to sell books. They go, well, to be able to get 24.95, it's got to be 297 pages, it's got to be 8 topics that are, it's got to be this right weight. People buy books by the weight. I much prefer buy books by the, please, distill down the information. Give me the 8 pages and I'll pay you 10 times more. I'll pay you, because what's your time worth? You know, they have so 24.95 minus the cost of it. Maybe I should bill the authors for my time to sort this out, to get to the 8 pages that make sense. And then they would be changing their ways. So that's where, it's time. People will say, well, time's the most valuable asset, and then they'll piss it away, and they'll go read a 247 book and not complain about it. We should complain that the one thing is 247 pages, and I obviously I get a little heated about it, but come on, man, you know, help a brother out. Give me the 8 pages, and I'll pay you more than you could have ever gotten, than for out of your 24.95.
What's a I'd be curious from both of you. What's a really memorable or unique uh, or creative content or creative contact that you guys implemented? Or what's one of the most memorable creative contact outreaches or pieces of content or uh, touch points that you guys came up with? Love a story from both of you.
Well, um, yeah. Uh, I once wrote an email to banks, thousands of them, that said Jim likes it fast and easy.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I don't think that wasn't an email. That was back in the
No, it was
fax
a
days.
fax, but it
That was
was
the
back in
fax
the
days.
fax days, yeah. But
Yeah.
but so that popped out of their fax and thousands of banks, and so some people responded going, that was hilarious. Some people went,
Yeah.
wow, I don't think that's appropriate.
hmm
Fine. You know
hmm
what? And so
It's funny though, the
I,
people that thought it was hilarious, like started sending us tons of business. It was funny. So it was almost worth the risk because,
yeah,
and you got to
it's
understand
it's polarizing.
it's polarizing and you're not going to appeal to everyone. I
No,
want to appeal to the people that I want to appeal to. And
yeah,
typically there's similar personality types. Those are the
yeah,
people that are easier to do business with, so, but that was memorable because, I
that
mean,
was memorable.
we got a few phone
Yeah,
calls on that one.
yeah, we did. Take me off your list. And
Hmm.
today, I bet you get a lot more. People are prickly these days, and so to do that today would be maybe we should try it again.
Yeah, why
They're not
not?
gonna, you know what, now you go, okay, these are the oversensitive folks. They spend way too much time online watching news and
Hmm.
getting sucked into too many things that don't matter. Yeah, Jim likes it fast and easy. And and then so there was it's probably, and I always include, not always, but often include little graphics. And I think there was a picture of, Jim the banker, he likes, because it's
Hmm.
all about getting fast approvals and easy,
Hmm.
right? So Jim likes it fast, but it grabs your attention. You go, what? Wow, that's
Hmm.
just inappropriate at the bank. Oh, I see what it is. That's clever. Or I'm having a bad day. I'm going to bitch. you know? There you go. But I think let me say that differently. I think and I you never know. It wasn't like it wasn't you kind of have to. There's some things where you take a risk on things. I once sent 3 sheep to corporate America too. Because I was angry at a policy and the whole idea of sending sheep in Velcro gloves. There's a joke behind that, right? It's a this is what
There is.
anyway. and 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 if you don't know it, that's okay. But so sent Velcro gloves and 3 sheep. Well, that could have gone really wrong, and they thought, well, yeah, we're going to kick you out of our banking system. But it went the other way, and today we're famous all over the world, and the biggest process, uh, biggest credit card processing network in the world.
Hmm.
Uh, one a vice president said the other day, you go to any one of our offices in the world and say you're the sheep guy, and they know your story and they love you. So and it was the same day that happened when I'd left my phone in the car and I'd gone into a CEO's meeting or a group, and I didn't want to belong to this, but we'd hired a consultant. I know. But we did it this is a while ago, and we did it, and we hired a consultant. He goes, "Well, part of the consulting gig is you gotta be part of the CEO group." And I'm going, "Man, I don't like those things." He goes, "Well, it's really important that you go." Fine. So it's the first day, first well, and so I go in, and we're sitting around a conference table, and it's mostly these second generation CEOs, right? Dad created the business, and now they think that they made the money, and they didn't, and they're talking about stuff that's ridiculous. To me, it seems ridiculous. I don't like it. It's common standard kind of stuff. Well, what we're going to do is, and so I said a couple times, it depend in a couple different ways. You realize it's never going to work. What you're talking about is never going to work. And they look at me like, wow, how dare you say it? Well, come on, man. It's not going to work. It's the first trip to the rodeo. What are you doing? And so as after that, I'd swung into the restroom on the way to my car, and the leader, the consultant, who said, "Well, you really should go," obviously followed me to the restroom, pulled up beside me, and goes, "Hey, why don't you not come back?" So the day I got kicked out of the CEO's group was also the day the sheep showed up, and we became famous around the world. So there you go. There's something to
Oh, yeah.
consider. The guy who sent the sheep to the sheep showed up and showed up at the front door. This is a very secure building. There's a few thousand people in it, and the security guy. The story goes, I wasn't there. We're hundreds of miles away, And apparently the sheep show up and at the front door and to be delivered to this vice president somewhere in the building. And the security guy goes, "Hey, you can't bring live animals into the building. That's against the rules. Who are they for?" Okay, so he goes up. The guy's name was Marty. And he tracked Marty down in a conference room and goes into the conference room. There's a security guy shows up in the conference room and says,
Yep.
"Marty, you can't bring live animals into the office."
Right.
And Marty's like, "What? What are you even talking? I don't know. What are you talking about?" And he said, "You can't bring. It's against the rules to have live animals in the." And he's like, "What?" So he goes, "You've got a delivery." So he goes down to the front door. The lady hands him the leash to the or leashes to the three sheep, and 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 so by this time, everybody in the building knows that Marty's vice president, honcho, and this big deal is outside has sheep. And he turns around and he goes, "Man, 3,000 people had their
Face
face
up against the
against the
glass.
glass." And then everybody came outside and were petting the sheep. And he got back. He said, "I got back to my office." And he goes, "Man, I can't get the sheep smell out of my. I smell like a sheep." And he goes, "Man, my email, the inbox didn't stop. I couldn't get to the bottom of it that day."
Yeah.
And yeah, it just kept rolling. I mean, in fact, his daughter, who lives in the same town, across town, called him up and said, "What are you doing with sheep, Dad?" It's like, what? Anyway, so you run, it, but when you do things a little bit differently, you get noticed. When you do things a little bit differently in a way that people are appreciative,
Mhm.
but that anyway. There you go. There's
Who
a
was it that we
couple.
sent the beaver pelt to?
Oh, that's another guy.
Yeah.
Uh, Yeah, it was a beaver that I'd trapped years ago, back in my trapping days when I was in high school. Trapped a beaver and I tanned myself. I tanned the beaver hide, and I had it. I had just had it,
Hmm.
kicking around, and this is the head of security at a different organization that we did business with,
That's what
a
it
guy by
was.
the name of Marcus, and
Yep.
so one of the things that we found is that we end up being the favorite of everybody. And so all the banks we work with, like higher up, the Visa Mastercard banks, they go, "Man, we love you guys. Da da da. You're not only are we fun, we do a really good job in a fun sort of way, right?"
Right.
And one of them is this beaver pelt thing Chuck's talking about. And so I had this beaver pelt, and so we go meet Marcus. I don't know, some event, Las Vegas, or at their place and somewhere around Los Angeles,
Yep.
and so somehow Chuck and I and Marcus became the Beaver Brothers, and I don't even know how that even came up,
I
but
don't
it
know.
did, and so when I was home and I came across this beaver pelt, I go, "Man, I got to send it to Marcus," and so sent it to Marcus, and maybe that's how it came up. I don't know which came first, but I sent him the beaver. Something came up, and I sent him the
Right.
beaver pelt, and he's like, nobody sends somebody a beaver's pelt, and but it was like super, so it was just one of those things, and then because we do a good job, and we send people beaver pelts. I also sent them. The first college I ever went to was Bemidji State University Beavers. And so I went online and ordered a Bemidji State Beavers, big beaver on the front. Sent him a Beavers T-shirt, sent him a beaver pelt, and now, what's the guy not going to do for you? Now
Right.
we're like blood brothers, right? So
Right.
you see him at an event, or you call him up. Who's going to get there? If he's got three messages for people to call, who's he going to call first?
Yeah. It's
If
gonna
we're
call
one of
us.
them, they're going to call
Yeah.
us first.
Yeah.
Whose business are they going to get done first? Ours. And so, you do this because one, life should be more fun. Business should be a hell of a
Right.
lot more fun than people make it out to be. And so when you start doing stuff like this, man, it just becomes more interesting to you, to the people you're doing business with, and as sort of something that falls out of it is they do your business first. They get your stuff done quicker because they like you and they appreciate you. But it's certainly not. They don't teach you this stuff in business school.
No.
They don't. Um, the sheep story. I told the sheep story in another group that I'm involved in, and one of the guys in the group is a smaller group, maybe 25 people. One of the guys in the group is a pretty high flying attorney, and he said, "Man, do you mind if I tell your story?" He was talking to a group of like 900 students Arizona State, University of Arizona, or somewhere, 900 people in this auditorium, and you tell so. Oh, and also when I told that story, I gave everybody little stuffed sheep. I still so that group too is I'm they like every once in a while I'll get an email from somebody that goes, ah man, I was cleaning out my drawer or something, and I came across that little stuffed sheep that you sent me or that you gave me. And it's just it's got there's some real value. Well, and whether it's valuable to our it is it valuable to business? Yeah, but it makes life better. It makes business more interesting and fun. And now you've got sheep, you've got beaver, you've got you've got so many stories. Like back when I was in college too, uh, at Bemidji State University, I worked. I was a telemarketer. I sold rice, wild rice, because wild rice is grown. Wild rice is the native stuff is either grown in Minnesota or Canada. I mean, it grows naturally in Minnesota, Canada, Michigan. I think that's maybe a little bit over North Dakota. I'm not sure. But when I was growing up, my grandpa would buy wild rice from people who picked wild rice. He'd buy it at the shores of the lake and then process it and then sell it. And then I picked wild rice with my grandpa and made wild rice and all that kind of stuff. And I love eating it. And so I got this job selling wild rice. So I've got all these stories about my grandpa, we're picking wild rice and all this stuff. And, it's just, it makes, and you share the stories with the people that are interested in the same thing in what you're selling. It just makes it a lot more interesting than
Well, I
going
think it
by
makes it
the
relatable.
book.
People can
Yeah.
relate to you. And if they
Yeah.
relate to you, they
Yeah.
like you, they want to do business with you. It's just an all around better feel in
Mhm.
is in your day to day operating. Everything
Yeah.
can't be so clinical, and so
It's just
I
not interesting. Yeah.
no, it's not. And it's funny when you see people. We probably I don't know how many people we've hired over our tenure doing this, but it's you interview someone and they're fun, right? You're going, okay, this is someone that can fit into the team. This would be a right, chemistry.
Yeah.
Then they get here and they get on the phone and they start doing the job or doing what's expected of them, and it's like their complete attitude. It's like, who are you? They're just completely
Yeah.
someone different. They don't add that element of send out a beaver, have sheep delivered, tell the wild rice story. It's just, people are people, and that's who you're doing business with, and it
Yeah.
just, you got to relate with them in whatever the
Yeah.
message is.
Well,
If
and
you're sending it or
Chuck,
calling the phone.
Chuck has a story too of before we ever met. Uh, he had a different. Do you mind if I tell what you sold? So Chuck,
If
no,
you
I'm not going to tell a bad. I'm not going to tell a.
go for it. All right, go for it.
Okay, so Chuck used to sell beds, select
Hmm.
comfort, right? Because now
Hmm.
they have sleep. So that's the sleep number people,
Sleep
and
number. Yeah.
and they used to be telemarketing heavy. And Chuck was one of their, I think the two of the best people in the world, and Chuck was
Yep.
one of them. And and used to when we were talking about this with people on our sales team, Chuck would had mentioned, he goes when he would. He'd talk to people at night. What'd you say? Sleep tight, or
Sleep
on
tight.
a
Night
voicemail?
night. Yeah. On a voicemail.
Yeah.
Sleep tight. Night night. Just little fun things that people would go. They'd call you back and they go, "What did you say?" Because they're inquiring about, they have poor sleeping habits and their bed is uncomfortable, so they, pursued this. This was 30 years ago.
This
It
was
blows me
a
away.
while. Yeah, it was a
Crazy.
while ago. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, it does. It's almost like it doesn't matter when.
Yeah.
Being human and relatable is timeless.
Yes, it
It's
is.
timely and it's timeless.
Right.
And I would say today more than ever, people
Right.
people have kind of ratcheted back. People are sort of cold and standoffish and
Hmm.
prickly, and they're afraid to say anything.
Hmm.
Lest it be somehow undesirable to the whomever the listener is. Like, no, 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 no. We need more. We don't need less personality today. We need more.
More.
We need
100%.
so much more warm, genuineness. Uh, if there's anything you can test working on today, it's being warm and genuine.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's all that stuff is. It's not at all scripted. It's just, and what's nice about it, it's not. You can just be who you are. It's okay. You have permission to to
Right.
be to be who you are, and to be who you are, because that's what people remember. They don't remember the cardboard cutout John
Right.
Enerchuck. They remember the warm John Enerchuck.
Hmm.
They remember Night Night or the Beaver Story, or
Hmm.
all the secret stuff Ian's thinking about right now.
Right.
They don't remember the well, you
Well,
know.
and that'll carry you. It's interesting because you can. I've seen people that don't have very good sales technique and they're in sales positions, but they are just so themselves, right? There's the when you're yourself, you're more likable, and they can, without the techniques down, man, they're very very successful. And then as the techniques grow over time, they're unstoppable. So the hardest thing to teach, quite frankly, is just to have people be themselves.
That's it's
That's the hardest thing to teach.
That's exactly right. And I would say what Chuck just described is me. I didn't know. I had a heck of a time closing and all that kind of stuff. But what I found is that I was really interested. If I just go out and talk to people about what's interesting to them and what we're talking,
Hmm.
why I'm there, in an interesting sort of way, and then we get to the point like, wow, we're out of time. Should we just do the
Wrap it
paperwork?
up.
It's kind is,
Hmm.
and then I go, okay, I need to get better at I need to cut my time down. So I need to get better at the sales process, the selling process, and that's what I worked on. But yeah, I just started up like selling rice to the people in uh, to chefs around the country. It was just talking about wild rice. And I'd eaten a lot of it. I'd tasted a lot of it. I'd picked it.
Hmm.
I'd done all the stuff. It was just stories, and but stories sell too, because they can also then tell the story. Oh, we got this rice from this guy who picks rice with his grandpa.
Right.
So they can
Right.
the story then can transfer. And the sheep, man, when that guy retired, by the way, it was a sheep themed retirement party.
Yeah. Yep.
hmm I went to his office one time, and all he had is sheep all over the place. Little sheep, big sheep, stuffed sheep, porcelain sheep. The sheep all over the place. Yeah,
And that gave
if
him
it,
miles too. That gave him some clout like within his deal.
yeah, it
So
did.
it's like, oh yeah, you're the sheep guy. So it's immediately there. He's performing better, because he's getting things done because people know him as the sheep guy, right?
Yeah,
So it just, I think it's kind of like being the change you want to see. Like do fun things. Get it out there. It made his life
yeah,
better too, and he'll even tell
yeah,
you that every time we talk with her, I talk to them, you talk, that comes up every time.
yeah.
It comes up and it's funny, and it comes up with other people who worked with him. So,
Well, and it just
you
came
know,
up the other day because they've changed how they do business, and it's hard to get hold of anybody. They're way corporate, and
right?
so we're having a tough time getting a hold of. I got a hold of him. He's retired, but I have a cell phone, and I got a hold of him, and yeah, what's up? And yeah, man, who do we? And he goes, oh, call whatever her name was. And I worked with her for a long time. She knows who
He's the
you are, and
one.
da 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 da. Got a hold of her, and she was like, "Oh yeah," it's just like old time, and mentioned one of the people on her team. He goes, "Oh, I love that guy. Yeah, I didn't know that he was part. He didn't. She, so now we're."
Mhm.
Uh, because of that story long ago, we can bring it up again today, and it's alive again.
Well, I
Or
wonder
used in any way.
how many people did he do business with that he would actually take their call in retirement? I mean, he saw it was
uh,
you.
well,
You're
right,
retired. You're
yeah,
going, I
yeah,
don't want to talk to this dude I did business with years ago, but he
yeah,
answered your call right away. So,
yeah, immediately, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That tells you something.
Yes, it does.
So one of the things that you guys brought up on a previous call was that there was a mention of that sometimes when you're jamming on the CRM that you hope people don't actually answer the phone, and you hope you'll just end up leaving a voicemail. You just dive into that.
Yeah, Chuck, you do
Yeah, I
this
mean,
part well.
yeah. You cover a lot more. All you're trying to do here is make a soft touch, right? You just want them to know that you're thinking about them. So hey, I just keep it simple. Hey, just reaching out. And John brought up earlier when I'd go night night or sleep tight. because how the system worked there is you'd call someone, they wouldn't answer. If you left a voicemail message and they responded, you would get credit for the sale, regardless of where the sale channel came in. So you want something clever. You want something, um, I don't want to say touching, but you want something that relates to them, something that they can, that they're experiencing, and because you're sitting in front of your contact manager, you have your notes, and it might be something as simple like, "Hey, Ian, this is Chuck over at First Financial, just touching base, man. Hope all is well. How's the new little one doing? Great. Catch you next time." And then immediately you associate what's very positive and happy in your life with me, because I just called you and brought that up, right? So I always like to associate it with things that I know about the person, that is something that's positive in their world, because then you start associating that positivity with their experience with me, and just keep it simple. I love it because I mean, and we all like talking to people, and I get that, but I need to close business, right? We've all got bills to pay. We've got things we want to move on and grow our businesses. So I love voicemails. I could sit and leave voicemails all day because I know the outcome of that too, is
The
tremendous.
outcome is the income. Yeah.
The outcome is the income. Nicely put. So yeah, just leave something, relate it to something. Keep good notes. I know John's talked about this several times. In your contact manager, we have a spot that's for notes, that things that never change. Like, you love fishing, right? Okay, that could change, but things that are personal. Have a little section to know about your client, and just bring it up in the voicemail. Keep it simple.
Yeah. And
Super
where
simple.
Yeah,
The-
and as it relates to CRM, a lot of people put notes in history, and it gets lost. Like most
Never
CRMs, the
find it.
history is so long, you have to scan through. You don't have time for that. So we built a little section that's literally looks like a Post-it note where we put
Yep.
notes, and it's this, Libby plays volleyball.
Mhm.
You love fishing. Your son, da 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 da. Your daughter, your whatever the case is. So when I leave the message, like Chuck said, hey, you know what? I whatever you want to mention that, hey, I hope Libby's volleyball is going well. Just want to say hello. You know what? And move on. You don't have. We're not looking. Hey, call me back. Da da da. But contrast that to how people usually leave a message. Hey, this is John Eliason calling from ABC Company, and we've got 15% off. You've got
Yeah,
like
exactly.
delete.
Exactly.
I
And
don't
don't leave
leave it
long
alone.
voicemails. Don't
No.
leave long. No one likes long. Don't explain. Even, okay, let's say you're even in the throes of putting a deal together. Do not leave long voicemails. Hey, John, this is Chuck over First Financial. Had a couple things I needed to run by you. Give me a call. Don't go, hey, John, I was looking over this paperwork and I had a question, because A, too much time. B, they're going to hate you, and they're just going to delete it, and they're not going to call you because you kind of suck. And thirdly, there's no time. So what, I have to explain it 4 times? Just
Well, yeah.
keep
Then
it simple.
if they need to call back, now you have to talk about it again. You just
Yes.
wasted your time and their time, the most precious asset in the world.
Yes.
No, no, no. Just hey, give me a quick call.
Give me a quick
A
call.
guy like Chuck
Always.
said, whatever he said, it was perfect. Hey, a couple things. If you give me a quick call, and one of the other things as far as like leaving a message for somebody too. I get these from even people like attorneys or accountants who are supposed to be professionals. They go, hey,
Right.
give me a call tomorrow. When? When?
Oh, yeah.
And then, okay, so you're setting me up to go into voicemail hell. Just
Yeah.
please, you want me to call you tomorrow? What? Give me a couple choices.
I just
So
had that. You nailed that. So on dealing with the banker that we're taking over their portfolio, we're doing their processing for them, and the guy emails me on a Thursday and he goes, "Hey, Chuck, call me on Tuesday afternoon." Guess what happened when I called him? I bet you'll never guess.
yeah, I bet he didn't answer the phone.
He didn't answer his phone. He went right into voicemail. I'm like, dude, you told me to call you, and then it's just, then it's like, ah. And then all of a sudden, now we got a vicious phone tag thing going. So now we're calling. It's like, look, think through this a little bit.
Yeah, look
Hey,
ahead.
yeah, look ahead.
You
So
can be an example too of what you should do. Like,
right, yes,
when I get that, I'll go, and then so they'll either leave me a voicemail saying, call me later, or if they send me an email that says, hey, call me on whatever, Tuesday afternoon, I'll go, well, what works better for you? I've got
Right.
1:30 or 3:30. What's better for you? And then
Right.
so when they respond back, of course, you still might get tangled up in that, but at least you're being an example of what you should do.
Right.
And hopefully
Right.
they start taking notice that that you make more money than they do. They should yeah,
John.
I know.
Just the value of time, right? It's just the
Yeah,
value
the
of time.
value, right. Yeah, what time? What time?
Mm.
And most people are really bad at that, and a few people in the world are really just do it right. Doesn't take much to do it right. It doesn't take much to do it wrong, but the end result is, you save a lot of time when you just do that simple little thing right. If
Yes.
you change that, try it. Try it. Try
Yes.
it.
So when somebody new is coming on to your guys' deal, and they're aggressively implementing building a massive referral network, what does that actually look like for them? Like, is it, you tell them, hey, you got to hit, targeting 25 calls a day with, people who are potential referrers. Are you, what does that actually look like for somebody in that
Well,
position?
okay. So you mentioned calls, and so we don't track calls. You can, and maybe you can if you're new, right? Well, it takes me this many because there's ratios and all this stuff, and your objective is to get better over time. So if I'm really good at building a massive referral network, and if I have a list of people that I'm talking to, I want to get 28 to 35 new. Uh, um, I want to have 28 to 35 meaningful conversations every day, which means, we I got a hold of the right sort of person, and they understand what I do and the value, and we've agreed to keep in contact. That's it. So 28 to 35 of those, and so that's a lot. And so if I don't count the number of calls that I make, because that's not what I'm counting. I'm counting the number of connections that I made, because you can make a gajillion calls. It's also, you can call it the quantity quality ratio, right? How many you call in and how many good ones do you get, or did you make? There's that if you're new. So you said when somebody comes on with us, yeah, we're going to see how many calls they made to get how many, because that tells us, because when you're new, this first call is really important. Are you're calling the right people? I know you are, because we give you the people to call. And so what are you getting out of that? And then so we'll listen to those calls too, and we can go, oh, right here, because I mean, you hear what how we do things, right? And so we ask a lot of questions. We do what's called leading, which is you're just leading conversation by asking questions, is what that means. So we'll look at number of calls, but then later, like for myself, if I'm working on a new project, I'll look at the number of calls, go, okay, just to get a handle on it, how many calls it takes to get one of these things. Um, and also what we find is that, so if you're building massive referral network, typically this is something that requires a little bit of patience, a little bit of trust, a little bit of faith, a little bit of belief that it's going to work, because it doesn't rain down a lot of business right away. You're planting seeds. It's like you're planting a crop. So when you plant a seed, it's in May, it's not going to be ready to harvest until August. So it takes time to grow. It takes time for the situation to come up where what they're sending you, the situation comes up. And so, but what you want to do is you want to plant the whole, you want to, how big do you want this farm to be? You're going to plant 3 seeds, or you're going to plant 3,000 seeds. And so, but what happens, like in what we found, is that give or take in the first 90 days, things start happening more at about 90 days, a little bit, and more and more and more and more. So what you want, do you want at the end of 90 days a really small field, or do you want as absolutely big as possible? What do you want?
Big as possible.
Big.
Big as possible. So when your first 90 days, you're hammering on this thing. So if we just use easy math, go back to 28 to 35 meaningful conversations, meaningful conversations. You made a connection with somebody. Yep, I understand that's how. Yep, let's keep in contact. Da 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 da. So let's just say 30 at 5 days, you've got 150. So you've got what 600 connections in a month, and at 3 months you've got 1,800. So I want to be on pace to be about 1,800 at the end of 90 days, because what happens is your number of connections slows down because you're taking inbound calls and dealing with sales, and you just can't deal with you can't go at the 30 new connections, every meaningful conversations and connections every day, because you got slowed down by writing business. So you really, those first 90 days are so important, uh, to stay on it, and just, man, you want to make as many of those connections as, it's like both Chuck and I grew up in Iowa, and there's a saying, you go after like a biting sow. This is, you go after it like, and I always, another expression would be, you go after it like your life depends on it. And it really does. The style of the life that you're building really depends on how fast you get after this. We don't have forever. We have today. And so, all right, I want to do this today, and I want to keep score. So I'll have, we do keep score. You want to score yourself. You want to, what's the pace I'm going at? We use timers. Our CRM, we built a timer into it. So and we have click the dial. So click, brrr, and so immediately the timer starts. And for the first 3 minutes, the timer is green, and then it shifts to yellow, and then it's red. It's like, you're done. You've got to maintain your speed. Otherwise, you're not going to hit 30 today. You and then and also what happens too, you ever something come up and you can't work today, whether you're sick or somebody else is,
Hmm.
you're out of town, your first 90 days something like that's going to come up. So you want to bank as many contacts as you can, because shit happens, and you don't feel good, your phone line goes down, you've got to take your kid to the get a rabies shot. I don't know. Stuff comes up. Uh, somebody dies. You got to go to a funeral. There's a birthday party. A million things. It's a busy, busy world. So you really want to get after it. If they string it out, it's like, it's this never. It's like, imagine an airplane too, taking off, and there's, at the end of the runway a little ways, there's trees. You can either run this thing into the trees, or you build up enough speed and height to clear the trees, and take off, and off to London you go. Or you can hang yourself up in the trees, which and you go, I don't know what happened. I thought I was doing. No, you weren't going fast enough, honey. Didn't have enough loft. You gotta. So, and most people frankly get hung up in the trees, because they don't teach this stuff in the real world, in the rest of the world. This world is real too. We do this. They just, nobody teaches this except here. They always like pay for advertising, do this, go cult. It's like, oh my, but this takes somebody with a little ambition. This is under the umbrella of Freedom Challenge. It's a challenge to get free. If you do it how everybody shows you, you will not get free. So if you try to get free doing it the way everybody tells you, you won't get free. It doesn't matter how good you are at it, how much you polish it. It does not equal freedom. There's this path less traveled, is, the specific path. Not just, we're not just doing things different to be different. We're doing things. This is the path to get free. So it's different. We build things a little bit differently. And when you have a massive referral network, then people are calling you. Doesn't matter where you are. You can be on the moon as long as you've got a good connection. You can be hiking on a mountain somewhere. You can be on a sailboat. You can be doing so. So if that's the style of life that you want, it's kind of hard to do that building it the old-fashioned, typical way, because you're supposed to be at one spot. You're supposed to work your local market. You're supposed to, whatever you're supposed to do, and it just never quite pans out the way. When people are younger, they go, "Oh man, I want to live this life," and then they go get a real job, and you get real mediocre, and you get real missing what matters most in life, and then you regret it, and then on your deathbed you blame your job. I spent too much time at the office. Well, you just missed out. You took that path. that's the path you took. So that's the bed you made. So I was going to say die in it, but that's pretty harsh. You
Yes,
know?
right, right.
So out of all of the thousands of people that you guys have trained and worked with, or sales agents you guys have trained and worked with, is there any sort of uh, like a 80/20 principle of a handful of characteristics that when you guys see them really seem to indicate that they would do well in working in this type of sales role, or this type of opportunity?
I always think
Chuck?
I think that's a really interesting question. I just had this conversation with someone the other day that was working on some hiring in their business, and that definitely is something you develop over time. Because I used to think, and I think John would agree, that I used to think I could turn anybody into a good salesperson. No, you can't. And honestly, the easy thing to teach is actually the sales process itself. The hard thing to teach is them letting their personality come out, because that's what got them, the landed them the position anyway, is their personality. And then the other thing is aggressiveness. For me, I always wanted somebody that was almost overly aggressive and then teach them how to tone it back. It's harder to teach someone how to be aggressive. So if they're like aggressive in their my interaction with them, it's like, and smart. I mean, people got to be smart. They got to understand some things, right? And always want to tone back the aggression instead of try to instill aggression in them. Because if they're not aggressive, they will never be. You will. They just can't. And I think the previous question about building our network in the 90 days takes a little chutzpah to get after it and get on it. That you can't teach that. That just has to. I think you probably can if you were there at day one, because that's a nature nurture thing. But got
Yeah,
to be
day one.
aggressive. Got to be smart.
Yeah.
You
You know,
know.
and I would say you look for like Chuck, did you ever compete in any sports?
Oh yeah.
Did you
Yes, I
ever
did.
win?
Yes, I did. I
Did you
wanted to
ever
win.
never take like, I'm not gonna lose?
I'll just put it to you like this: I hate losing more than I like winning. So
There you go. So that's one of the things. Now, and so, I feel that way too. Like, if one of, if I'm gonna, I will win.
yeah.
I'm not gonna lose. Like if I get in a situation, I will beat you.
Hmm.
I will. There's no way that I will not win. I will win. I will suck all the air out of this room,
To win.
to win. I don't know how or what,
Hmm.
but and so that's helped me, in things and it's not that I'm angry about it. I have a little edge. I think you have to have a little edge. You have to have a little bit of humor. You have to be human.
Hmm.
um, I don't, I don't want to, like it's not used in a way that's going to hurt somebody.
Right.
It's used in a way that, and I'm going to win in a way that's going to be good for both of us. I'm not going to do something that's going to hurt you. I'm going to, God, it sounds like, I'm not going to hurt you. It sounds like a predator. God, but I'm going to do this in a way. If I'm going to sell something, and that's why our sales process is leading. It's questions like I want to find out what you're looking for. What are you trying to achieve? Okay,
Right.
so let's put this in, like what does it look like in real life? Well, it looks like I'm not, when you tell me, yeah, you got to think about it. Well, first of all, I'm not going to paint myself, and I'm not going to have painted myself into that corner. I'm going
Right.
to be, I'm going to be, if I'm going to be competitive, I'm also going to use good technique.
Right.
I'm going to have practiced. I'm going to record myself. I'm going to work on this. I'm going to observe how I'm doing and how it went and how can I modify this a little bit to be better. Whether it's whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is. It's tracking. It's scoring. It doesn't matter if I'm bicycling, wrestling, swimming, hiking, jumping, trying to sell something, trying to grow something. It's like measuring, and I want, and I'm probably in competitive. Uh, I want to win the life that I've always wanted to live.
Mhm.
Yeah, and and I don't need to, it's interesting in what we do too. I don't need to beat anybody to win. I
Mhm.
just need to be really good at what I do, and really good at um, helping somebody else get what they want too. Because sometimes they don't know that what I have is, I can see this is the best thing for them because I
Right.
know all the choices. And so it's partially my job to get them into what makes sense, because somebody else might have lied to them, which is common
Right.
in a lot of business. Yeah. And so it's partially my responsibility to be really good at this, to get them into what is best for them, because it'll do them right. It's the right thing for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and I
So
think
so
when
you
you
asked, yeah, it's smart and competitive. Chuck hit smart and competitive.
right, and but
You
you
can,
brought up
yeah.
a really phenomenal point that I think a lot of people they get tunnel vision. They don't look for this. I think when you hire people, you got to hire people that kind of understand. They got to kind of understand, like almost the bigger picture, if you will, those things. That it isn't all about me, right? I need to give, I need to do the right thing. I need to make sure that's understanding the bigger picture. I know a lot of people that are smart, super aggressive, super competitive, but they'd throw their grandmother down a flight of stairs to close a deal. I don't like that. I don't want to hire people like that because it's like a cancer. It creates a bad atmosphere with the people around them. It's integrity. You got to have people that have integrity. They get it. I'm a straight shooter. I understand the bigger picture. It's not just about me. I understand we're moving forward. I need to do my part. John Wooden, which, the coach of, was it UCLA basketball, won like 10 national titles. He
John
said,
Wooden.
yeah, John Wooden. And he said, I don't worry about the score. I just worry about every player playing their part perfectly. So every player understood that. So you need some of that you need that in your employee, in your hiring practices too, that this person has to understand those concepts. You can't be a complete rogue cowboy. It doesn't work in the world because you're dealing with
Yeah.
people. You know what I mean? So,
Well, we've
but
we've we've had to terminate agreements with a couple
oh
people who
yeah,
are like, this is not the way we yes, we want a lot of business, and we love to, all the things that come from all that,
right,
but we don't need. Chuck and I decided long ago we wanted to sleep at night,
yeah.
and so you can be extremely. I mean, we've set records. Nobody's ever sold as
Hmm.
much as we have.
Hmm.
Never. Nobody I've ever heard of. Probably nobody will.
Hmm.
Well, maybe somebody will if they they can always be better than us.
Yeah,
you
right.
know, but they really could if they followed did the system that we do. They could certainly write more.
Yeah,
But they're all caught up in doing things a little. There are scientific shortcuts that are really like human nature kind of stuff, and you go, okay, if I understand this stuff, it's easier for me. But there's also cheap shortcuts, and they're tricky, and they're hoodwinky, and
yeah.
they're cheating, and a lot of people like to do that because they're going to make some short-term money, but they don't make long-term money. But we've found, if a good way to make long-term money is to really, you want to do your absolute best, and you are competitive, you are all these things, and you set this up to win. And
Hmm.
so, we do the massive referral network, and people aren't going to refer business to us if we aren't doing the right thing. They're not going to refer much or very
Right.
long. If you're doing the right thing, they go, wow, I found somebody who's doing the right thing. And we're good at this, so we get the business on, which is good for the person that they sent to us, good for them, good for us, and we do it in the right way. So you're strong in all areas. How you do business. For all you're strong in all these ways. And like Chuck said, John Wooden. It doesn't matter the score; it matters that we're all. And so, every player's doing the right thing at the right time, or however you said that. And you can look at yourself too. I'm strong in all these areas. It doesn't matter. Like one of the things Chuck talks about too is like, kind of fits what we're talking about. Things go to hell in a handbasket. Who do you want in your foxhole?
Mhm.
You're going to war. You're going to war. You're going. But this is hard, and what we do is challenging. That's why we call it the Freedom Challenge. If it were,
Right.
if it were easy, everybody be doing it and everybody be free. But everybody's not free, and very few people are free. And who are you going to learn that from? And I think if you're going to be free too, you want to learn that from somebody who's like, look, I'm not, and it's not like you're being a dick about it, but you're just being strong about it.
Mhm.
It's like coaching. Look, we want to win the game,
Yeah.
and you can't cheat because then you get penalized. So
Yeah.
we have to be strong in all these areas. And so it's just like that.
And
So you get penalized if you do business wrong.
yeah, and just shoot
Hmm.
people straight, dude. Don't make it difficult to do business with you.
Yeah.
Make it easy
Well,
for
and
people to do business with you, because that's how
yeah.
you get a lot of it. If it's difficult, it's like, yeah, I got it done, but at what cost? It can't be at the cost of everyone else. You've got to get it done, get it and really simplify it. That's how you'll get more business. And I know we're talking about hiring, but you got to hire people who understand that.
Yeah, smart and competitive. We'll go back
Yep.
to that. Smart and competitive. I,
Yep.
I look for. I want to know. Have you ever played a sport?
Hmm.
Hmm.
What'd you do? How'd you do? We've got a guy named Chad back at the office. He wrestled at a pretty high level.
Hmm.
Wrestled, for college level, very
Hmm.
high level. So I want people who have competed. We have Evan who's won a couple of national championships in lacrosse.
Hmm.
These people are competitive. They know what it takes to win. They know what it takes to get in the right shape and condition and speed and all and so the same thing is true if your game is
Hmm.
freedom.
Bingo.
So who's for people who are watching these videos, who is a great fit for the Freedom Challenge or taking the next step in working with you guys? Is there an archetype or characteristics
Yeah.
of,
I
of those types of people?
Yeah. Yeah. There are a lot of people who have a dream. And they just want the life they've always wanted, and whatever that means to them. And so they've chosen a path to be an entrepreneur, and which is the smart way to go because it's really tough to get free doing anything else. But they're looking around in the world and they're buying different things and they're taking different courses and usually it's just polishing the same stuff that we talk about we found just doesn't quite work and you never understand why because it's doing that really well. They said to do it like this, I'm doing it, but it's not really working.
Hmm.
Uh, and so I want those people. I want those people who, and they didn't just, be a entrepreneur. They've actually run stuff. They've run their own business. They go, gosh, man, there's got to be something better than this. I don't mind, I don't mind working hard, but what I do mind is not living my dream. So it's and so those people that I've had, this is not working with us is not a 101 level thing. It's not this is not for beginners. This is for people who have done something and go, man, I just I like what they're talking about. I've never heard it said that way. And it's like, well, of course that's the way it works. It makes sense. I would love to work with somebody um, who has done it a little bit differently. So somebody with experience and somebody's like, man, I can't not live this
Great.
thing that I want to live. I must do that, and I can't do it. Back in whatever I've been doing, how I've been doing it. And I will, and it's somebody who's seen enough of us to have some trust and faith in what we're talking about is true. And
Hmm.
they
Yeah.
can come and visit us and see, you know,
Order it up.
if we're real,
Yeah.
that we're totally open to that, and people have done that. And not everybody has to. Eventually, I think most of the salespeople that we work with that are free have come to visit us.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in advance or at first, but then they go, "Oh, I really like you guys. I want to come and well, come on over." You know, uh, and so anyway,
It.
so somebody who's got real, they've run their own business, they've
Yeah.
run it, and they've tried all kinds of things, and it just hasn't quite panned out, and and they see our stuff and go, "Man, I see that I can put the time, energy, and effort that I do have, the smarts that I have, the competitiveness that I have, I can put it in a different industry and do it in a different way with people that I appreciate."
Spot on. I think half our people have left something that they were successful in, but they just could never be free, right? It's like, I can't be free. Half our
Yeah.
people have been on the search, have run several of their own deals, and they just couldn't quite get the recipe figured out. So they need a little help with the recipe. So, I think it's probably a balance between those two. But you got to have some kind of real world experience, like running
Yeah.
your own deal, because
Yeah.
that way you understand all the nuances. Because you're like, yeah, I've been there. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
done that. A guy
Yeah.
that's worked at Walmart doing the checkout, he hasn't felt it. He hasn't laid awake at night worried about payroll, or
Yeah.
something. You know what I mean? You got to have kind of that behind you a little bit.
Yeah, because then, well, we understand for the most part what you've been through too, so we can
Right.
go, so we can train you on what we're doing by going, hey, you ever have this happen, or you remember when
Uh,
this has happened? They go, oh my God, go, it's that thing right there. Turn it like this is how we do it over here, and they go, ah, got it. So if you've never done that, we can't do that. We
yeah.
can't. It makes it easier for us to teach because we it's not our first trip to the rodeo. We understand what people do in other industries
Yeah.
and
Sure.
businesses, and what they run into. It's
Mhm.
we see that stuff. We understand it.
So
Yeah.
what about for somebody who really loves your guys' approach and really thinks that is really interested, but they say something like, I have no financial services experience. I've never I've used a credit card, but I have no understanding of what credit card processing is.
Good. Uh,
Perfect.
because if you have done this, we don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Uh, it's true because other companies will have taught you shady stuff. Bottom line, shady stuff, or just bad ways. Those shortcuts we talked about that aren't good. This is we run. We want people to have a little different, like, appreciate us and the business and the freedom. And you've thought about that. You're not a shortcut taken.
Yeah.
What have I called them in the past, Chuck? Cheap dime store
Yeah.
hoods. We don't, you find those a lot in sales. They're just thuggish
Hmm.
shysters, and frankly, you don't need a license to do what we do, so it's a very low bar to get in with most companies. And so they do, and you can go out and you can trick somebody into saying yes and make $1,000 this week. It's not going to last you very long,
Hmm.
and so we'll go, look, yeah, we don't do it that way. We'll take this. It's going to take a while to build this massive referral network, but we build, but in that process, you can also get sales too, and we'll show you. We show them how to do that. It's not just building for 90 days and hoping something comes in along the way. You're getting business
Right.
too. But it's not. You're not hoodwinking somebody. You're not going. You might. Plenty of people have gone out and made $1,000 on a. It's just not a common thing. Maybe you're going to make $500 on something that comes in. Right off the bat. It's not a get rich quick deal. It's a get free deal, and stay free deal.
Hmm. Hmm. I always say it's got long legs on it, which means
Very
when
long
you
legs.
when you
Give
when you decide to
when
get more and more free, it still runs for you for a long
Yeah.
time.
Well, and so it gives you opportunity it gives you downtime.
Yeah.
It gives you downtime when you build this in a way, like we do. It gives you an opportunity. You can, like, when you go to our website, there's a guy named Cam, and he kind of smiles and shakes his head and goes, "Man, I could take 2 months off and still make $30,000." You
Hmm.
know, uh, because that's what it is. And people, so people, in most things, whether you have let's say a real job and doing whatever you're doing at corporate America, you get a week off and you go on vacation, you come back to the shitty grind that's never going to end until you die or retire. Or if you do something a little bit differently, where you're paying for advertising or you're cold calling or whatever, you're doing what everybody else does. When you're away, you know that it's all slowing down really
Hmm.
fast,
Hmm.
and you have to get back and you've got to restart it, and it's harder. So it's really hard to you don't want to take time off. You don't want to take the kids to Disney World because when you get back, it sucks and it's hard and you have to restart it. But when you do what we do, how we do it, you can take the kids to Disney World like Cam would. Let's go for 2 months. We're still going to make thirty thousand
Yep.
dollars, you know, and that's how. Uh, You know, if you want the life where you can do things like that, and you can, you can travel more, you can go to more places for longer periods of time. And while you're there, by the way, your phone might ring when you're
Yeah.
in a Swedish hotel, and you might write a deal because that's how you set it up. And you go, yeah, or it goes into voicemail and you call them tomorrow. You know, whatever the case is, all those things have
Hmm.
happened, do happen.
Yeah, I'd much rather be all over anywhere I'd want to be and be accessible than strapped to a desk for 70 hours a week. I mean, that just
Yeah,
does not.
or any hour.
Yeah, or
You know,
8 hours a
I don't
week
want to have to
for
be.
that matter.
You
Yeah,
know,
that just
remember the
just
last office space that uh, the like just most places where you go to work, they just are not nice places to work. You know, even the nicest. I was in downtown Minneapolis the other day, and I thought, wow, you've got a nice view. I'd sure hate to work here in
yeah,
this,
right.
in this low lit building, but you sure have a nice view. And it's like I wouldn't know. No, I'd rather have that view. I'd rather have it be wherever I want it to be. You know, and that doesn't mean, I'm always on the run, but it just means that that we have options. We have choices. We build choices where most people don't have feel like they don't
Right.
have choices. Every day we are adding choices. Or the more you build this, the more choices you have, or the choices that you'd like to have, you always have. However you
Right.
say it, however you want.
Mhm.
Right.